Hello and thank you for joining us. This is Brian, your host of the Perish the Thought Show. The opinions of said host and our guests have not been sanitized or scientifically tested, so please consume at your own risk. Ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, welcome back to another episode of the Perish the Thought Show. Mark Twain said, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes." The story you're about to hear is one of the reasons this phrase exists. You may think you know what happened in the tragic shooting of Breonna Taylor back in March of 2020 in Louisville, Kentucky, but no one knows the real story better than the lead officer on scene, Sergeant John Mattingly. Sadly, the truth has been buried by the local and national media, elected officials, Hollywood stars, and professional athletes, and the consequences have been devastating until now. We talk about John's book, 12 Seconds in the Dark, a police officer's first-hand account of the Breonna Taylor Raid. He explains the minute-by-minute events of that fatal night and the subsequent fallout to his family. Thank you, John, for coming on. It's an honor having you on. I feel like a little fanboy almost, celebrity crush after hearing about the story and reading your book and hearing about you. So I appreciate you fitting me in today. So,
well, Brian, appreciate you having me, man. Anytime we can get the truth out, that's what it's about.
You know, that's a funny statement anymore because you hear it and people say, well, that's true to this person and this is true to that person and everybody's personal truth. And it's like, what does it even mean anymore? And I mean, I know what you mean, but we're in such a convoluted world right now that it's not.
Well, I get it. When I had my interview with Strahan for 2020 Good Morning America, his big thing was, well, I just don't feel that. I feel this way. I feel this is happening. I was like, Michael, it don't matter what you feel, man. The truth is the only thing that matters. And that's the problem. Everybody's gotten into this emotional, well, I feel this way. Therefore, for me, it's, quote, my truth. That's what he kept saying, my truth. I'm like, my truth don't matter. Your truth don't matter. The truth is the only thing that is consistent and that matters. And if we just base everything off that hard line, then life would be a lot easier. But instead, everybody's emotions get flared up and for whatever reason, they put the blinders on and can't see the truth.
No, yeah. And I know, listening to you talk about that interview, and you said that it was a 3-hour interview and they used 5 minutes of actual content.
Right. Yep.
That's just disturbing on six different levels, but it's not surprising. And I'm sad because I remember the days when you turn on the news, I'm a couple years older than you. You turn on the news and you trusted it. Yeah. And it was actually trustworthy, I think.
Right.
And it's not the same anymore. It's disturbing.
Well, that's funny you say that, because when this first went down, my daughters, one's 26 now, one's 24. They were just 3 years ago, so 23 and 21 at the time. They had some friends reaching out, saying stuff to them online that they went to school with, they thought were their true friends, and they were disturbed by it and they were mad. And I said, ho, pump the brakes. I said, wait a minute. We are raised to believe that the news is going to tell you the truth. What you just said, your kids think that. We thought it growing up. Oh, well, if we want to know the truth, you turn on the nightly news and you find out what's going on during the day. And when we had just a one-sided narrative, pushing all these mistruths, on purpose lies, some of it was just ignorance. But when that's getting put out and there's nobody pushing back on your behalf saying, wait a minute, hold on, that's not true, or that's not totally true. You took one little piece of truth and twisted it to your narrative. And we had gag orders on us, so we couldn't do it. And our city and our department refused to do it for whatever political reasons. And so I told them, I said, just wait. Once the truth comes out, if they change their mind then, or if they don't change their mind, more importantly, and they're still saying all this stuff, then you can, defriend them. I said, other than that, give them the benefit of the doubt, because if I were on the outside looking in and all I heard for years was this narrative and nobody ever pushed back against it, the city paid out this big amount of money, they fired all the officers, they did all these things, I would sit back and go, something's wrong with that. Something's up. They screwed up somewhere. So I get that side of it. I'm not naive to that.
It doesn't look good. Whenever there's a payout, it doesn't look good. It looks like, it's hush money. Almost,
especially before the criminal trial even took place.
Yeah,
I mean, that's unprecedented. It's just, but you saw it in 2020. You saw it with George Floyd. You saw it in our case. Now the Ahmaud Arbery thing, those guys don't have money to go after, so Ben Crump was there just for publicity's sake. But the fact of the matter is, anytime that he would show up, Ben Crump show up and cause a stir and throw out all these crazy lies. I mean, he's the one that started, we had the wrong house and she was in bed asleep. And the guy was already in custody hours before that we were, quote, looking for, which we weren't looking for him. We were there to serve a search warrant for property, for evidence. We knew where he was. They had a tracker and ping on his phone. He was not arrested at the time. Everything was done simultaneously. So that was just another distortion and total fabrication of what happened that night. And he's got the prominence, on the stage. And in 2020, we had all these emotions going between those three huge cases that kind of culminated and came to a head. And on top of that, you've got an election cycle happening. It was just chaos, man. It was the perfect storm.
Perfect storm to destroy people's lives.
Right.
These it's like the movies. It doesn't even, when I'm reading your book, it doesn't even seem real. The amount of deceit and the crap that you dealt with. So maybe just for the listener's sake, for those who maybe haven't read your book at this point, just summarize, why you wrote it, just a general kind of high level view of the story for those that may not know.
All right. So the main reason for the writing, everybody gets there and goes, oh man, you're profiting off a death of an individual. That's not the case. The book isn't about Breonna Taylor. It's not slamming her. This is, and let me tell you, unless you're somebody famous, you don't get rich off writing books. Yeah. You make pennies. I'm just saying. So getting the truth out, that's the entire premise of this. And it's not for me. Our case is over. It's too late. This is for the next guy and the next guy coming down the pike, because these things aren't going away. There's always going to be this racial narrative and this push of the police are the bad guys. So the whole goal in the book is to give people the facts, saying, hey, pump the brakes. Wait a minute. When you hear these big stories, let's get to the meat of this thing and see what we can find out. Because once you see the truth and once that onion layers start getting peeled back, hopefully you'll see that, there's more to it than just this is a storyline. You'll start seeing there's political games being played. There's people's lives being screwed up because of all these lies. People irreparably hurt that can't recover from it. And so I wrote the book just for that reason, to say, hey, here are the truths, here are the lies. And again, some of those lies I mentioned a minute ago, you had LeBron James, you had Kamala Harris, you had all these people getting on TV saying they had the wrong residence. Not true. Her name, her address, her car, her social, everything was on the warrant. They said that we didn't knock and announce. Not true. Knocked and announced for over a minute. We had a witness that came out and argued with us while we were announcing that we had to go back in their house. Even Kenneth Walker said we knocked. And then later on, he kind of slipped that we announced by saying, well, we heard them at the door, so we started yelling, who is it? Who is it? And they wouldn't answer back, is what he said. But then later on, and this is something I think I put it in the book. I can't remember now all that's in the book, but a friend of Kenneth Walker's, who's a police officer that grew up with him, said, who was also a courtesy officer at those apartment complex. In other words, he worked for the apartment, lived at the apartment that Breonna Taylor did, went to middle school and high school with Kenneth Walker, talked about, he sees him all the time. They talk, he knows his mother. And when he was in his apartment and heard the gunshots, he turned his radio on and he heard an officer was shot. He threw his uniform on and came down. Well, by that time, the scene was secured and Kenneth Walker's mother had showed up because Kenneth called her first. Everybody hears the 911 call and go, oh my goodness, that sounds horrible. And it does sound horrible, but they don't understand that 911 call didn't take place until 6 minutes after the shooting took place. The news spins it like he heard him at the door. He didn't know who it was, so he called 911. Wasn't the case. Didn't call 911. Had a minute. Should have called 911 during that minute. Maybe we could have worked this thing out and he would have realized we were the police at the door, but didn't. Brings Breonna into the hall. And then after the incident, calls his mother first. And then 6 minutes later, calls 911 and then calls Breonna's mother. So anyway, Kenneth Walker's mom comes to the scene like any mom would when he calls and says, hey, something's going on. So when she sees this officer that she knows, that Kenneth knows, she walks up to him and says, hey, I don't know what's going on. Kenneth called me and said they're at the door. She said, I said, who's at the door, baby? And he said, it's the police. I got to go, and hung up. Now, we don't know when that call took place. Did it take place before or after the shooting, or before or after the door knock? We don't know. But he knew we were the police at the door. And the reason that's relevant is because that same officer gave his sworn statement right after the event. Well, months later, he's now marching with protesters and posting stuff on his Instagram saying, we'll never let these dirty cops do this to our people again and all this stuff. And I'm sitting back going, Wait a minute. Before you knew the narrative they were saying, you told the truth under oath that he knew we were the police at the door. But later he switches his story and goes, and I had no idea who it was. Didn't know who it was. And initially when he came out, he said Breonna's the one that shot, not him. So this guy keeps changing his story, keeps lying. And I just wanted that to get out, because when you see him on these shows, they're coddling him. They're saying all these things. And even on those Good Morning America and the other ABC one that he was on, he just kept lying. One, he said he held her in his arms and took her to the ground after she was shot, but he had no blood on him. There were holes in the wall right where he would have been standing if he did that. And so tragic event, horrible event. Wish it hadn't happened, because every police officer's worst nightmare is shooting someone who doesn't deserve it. And she didn't deserve to get shot. So we'll put that out there. She was a victim in this also. It's just a tragic event, though. It wasn't a criminal act that people want to make it out to be. And that's what I try to get across in the book. And the more that we come at good cops, the more we demonize the good police officers and push these criminals to the top, you get guys that are good cops that are going, screw this, I'm done with this department. I'm done with this profession. You know, I can go do something else and make more money and not get hated all the time. So I'm looking down the road, 5 years, 10 years from now, we're already way behind in police officers. So now we're taking, are you breathing? Or do you have a heartbeat? Come on in. You're a cop now. That's a danger, man.
Yeah.
I don't want those guys being my police in 5 or 10 years, because now we're going to have New Orleans and in Detroit in the 80s where you're going to have a bunch of corrupt cops. So it's just my kind of warning to the public saying, hey, you know, sit on these things, wait for the story to come out. And once you find out the truth, then support. Now, if the cop's wrong, go to prison. You know, it's the way it is. So we're not out here protecting this, quote, thin blue line where we're covering up for people. That's not the way it works. People are so confused about all that, but that's not it.
Well, yeah, and it just, you know, and I was telling you about, you know, some of my family members and their perspective is they didn't want me to do this. They didn't want me to talk to you, didn't want me to give you airtime, didn't want to, you know, don't buy his book, because they bought the other line. They bought the other story. And sorry about my canine interruption there. Oh my gosh.
I got a couple running around, so
he knows the UPS mail truck and the garbage truck. He can hear their brakes and he freaks out. And he always does it during one of my shows. So
it's
when
Murphy's
he goes,
Law. It always
he ain't getting replaced.
If you have anything to do with it.
But yeah, and I try to teach them and just anyone, because I consume nothing but conservative media and just the media trough over 20 years. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier in an email. That's all I consumed. And I was frustrated and mad all the time. And anything that was remotely from a liberal side, I hated it, but I didn't know why. It's because I was just taught to hate it. And that's because I was only chewing off one side of the,
right.
You know, and that's, you can tell what someone's consuming by just talking to them, because they'll say the same things, the same talking points, the same, you know, it's like, wow, you know.
And my theory is that probably 80% of Americans get along, want the same thing, have the same goals. You know, government, leave me alone, give me the opportunity like everybody else has to support my family. You know, I want safety. That's about it. Other than that, I don't care what political party you are. I don't care what color you are, what your sexual orientation is. I could care less about all that stuff. Just, are you a good person? Can we, you know, let's have a common goal and go for it. But then we've got this 10% on each side that are pushing these crazy narratives that just cause so much division with everybody else. Because at some point, it's like tribalism or anything else. You're like, well, I got to pick a side. You know, that one's worse than this one, even though I don't like this one. So it's the lesser of two evils. I got to pick something. And that's kind of what we're stuck at, I feel like, in this country.
And I believe that you don't have to. In fact, I'm working on a book, either a book or a really long article, something I've been wanting to do for years, about just being on the fence. You don't have to pick a bloody side. You can, because the left isn't evil and the right isn't evil. And that's where we've gotten, because that's sexy, that sells. If we're all getting along, the media, what are they going to do? That's not going to sell. They'll just crumble. If we're getting along, nobody's fighting, but we're othering. And I've been preaching this for years. We other people. Y'all, you're from that. You're one of them, or the Dems, or the libs, or the right wing blowhards, or the Trumpers, or whatever. Fill in the blank. That's where we're
Right.
at. And it just feeds. And, of course, like you said, perfect storm with your situation. Um, it's awful. And I'm trying, I hope it's getting better, but I don't think it is.
No, I mean, you see little glimpses and then you see just total setbacks. And you wonder if some of those setbacks are planned or not. You don't know. But like you said, chaos is what sells, chaos is what keeps them in business. And they pull a lot of the strings. So, it's hard to say. Like in our instance, I always wondered why in the world, we've got a city of about 1 million people. And when you had the truth, when the mayor had the truth at his fingertips from the beginning, when our police chief had it from the beginning, all the facts that it was the right place, that she wasn't in bed asleep, that he wasn't in custody, that Jamarcus Glover, all his stuff tied back there. One of the big things they say is, well, there was no dope or money found. Well, because we didn't search. That's why. Because once this event took place, our public integrity unit came in, which investigated shootings and criminal elements in the police department in the city. They come in and they take over the scene. Well, when they do that, they write their own warrant to collect ballistics, to collect evidence of the shooting. That's the scope of their warrant. So they came in, they wrote their own warrant. They came in and collected blood, bullets, took their pictures, did whatever they needed to do, collect the handgun that was in plain view under a bed, and left. Well, when they did, somebody from the narcotics came in and said, hey, let's go finish this warrant. We started it. We're in this mess because of it. Let's at least go do what we came here to do. And they were told by the people downtown, not going to happen. You're done with it. So nothing was searched, shoeboxes, attics, all that stuff wasn't looked. We don't know what was there. Don't know what they got. We know by the jail phone calls she was holding their money. That was stated several times on there. Even Kenneth Walker said he had $1,000 sitting on the dresser that they didn't collect for whatever reason, which is fine. Whatever. That's not their job. The failure came from up top. And a lot of the things in this case, because there was a lot of mistakes done before, during, after, little mistakes, but when you add them all together, it compounds and it's huge and it looks really bad. And but a lot of those came from the top, unfortunately. And the ones up top aren't going to take accountability. You know that. They just point down, and most of them retired by now, but it's something you can't control.
Do you think it's fear on their part? I mean, let's say they took all the actual truth of the situation and put it out there. What is it? Are they afraid?
I don't know, because when I reached out to our city council president weeks before the George Floyd thing, you could feel the tension building up in Louisville because of the Ahmaud Arbery, and Ben Crump had gotten on that case, and he was pushing Breonna Taylor, say her name, run for Bree, all this stuff. And when that was happening, you could feel the tension building. More and more people started coming out. So I reached out to our administration downtown. I was like, can you please just release some of this information? Because this is a powder keg getting ready to go off. You're going to burn our city down if you don't. And their answer was, no, I can't do it. We won't do that because it sets precedent for future cases. And I'm like, well, number one,
what does that mean? Like,
they
if they do something a certain way
all the time. Yeah. They're saying, well, we don't talk about cases that are active as they go on. And I said, well, that's a lie. Number one, had we had body cams, and I wish we did, you release those within 24 hours. What's the difference in releasing a video version of what happened and you getting up there and telling us what happened, showing us documented evidence of what happened? There's not much difference.
And so if they did it, their fear, or their quote unquote, that statement setting precedent, if they did it once, then they would have to do it for every other situation down the road. Is that what they were?
Yeah, but that's not the case, because it constantly changes.
Okay.
So the parameters, the goalposts, they move all the time.
That was just
and you say, why did they do it? For fear? I'm not sure. I think originally, I don't think there was any malice originally. COVID hit on March 13th, which is the day this shooting took place. Well, it didn't hit. That's when everything shut down.
Yeah.
That's when the president came out, shut things down. The governor shut things down in our state. And I think they thought, as I did, this may not be a big issue, because you got a white cop shooting an unarmed black female.
Anyway.
So the question was, did they do it out of fear? And I don't think so. I think with COVID just hitting, I think they thought, man, this is an opportunity to kind of be like an ostrich, stick our head in the sand, ignore it. Hopefully it just kind of goes away. And it was. You didn't hear much about it for about a month and a half, until the Ahmaud Arbery thing. So again, it may have gone on, and you and I would never have met, and everything would have been, copacetic. But then that happened, and I think they were caught off guard because the mayor had already gotten on stage, brought her on stage, the family on stage, their attorney, saying, we're going to get justice for Bree no matter what it takes. If I could fire these officers today, I would, but they're protected under Kentucky Constitution and all this stuff. So he had already established where he stood because he's such a pander to the West End, which is our urban community. He's such a pander to that community that he gets on and blasts the police all the time about stuff. And you're scratching your head going, number one, it didn't happen like that. Number two, the police aren't the source of this. It was the bad guy shooting at the police first, or whatever the scenario may be. It seems he always took the side of the criminal. And so I think originally it was COVID's here. We don't have anything to worry about. This will go away. But then once it got exposed, I think they were caught off guard and they stuck to their guns and refused to change course.
It's disturbing because it's so prevalent. It's nothing new, really. Biblical times is we act like it's new, but it's not. It's, men's hearts and cowards and weak men. Have any of these quote unquote, for lack of a better term, leaders ever come back to you and said, hey, we were wrong there, or we're sorry with what happened, or you're just been on your own, left in the wind from day one?
Up to the wind. So I talked to, naturally, they all come to the hospital when you first get shot the first day. The second day, the chief came by, and I talked to him, honestly, for about 2 hours by ourselves, and I told him the entire story. So from day two, he knew all the events of that night, everything leading up to it, exactly where we were. So he couldn't claim ignorance, at least from the account he got from me. Now he could have felt free to look into it further and get his own, evidence to back up those claims. He chose not to. And when I'm off course now. What was the original question? I'm going back to
have any of these people that
Oh, no. So after that,
right,
after that time of talking to him the second day, I never talked to him or anyone except one person from the chief's office after that. And I talked to that person in the chief's office one time. And so from March until today, a little over 3 years, 3 years and 1 month later, I haven't talked to them since day two at the hospital.
That's just wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, it was very weird how the instant separation took place. And like within a month, our city council person that was over public safety got on a live Zoom with Ben Crump and all the other, because COVID, they weren't meeting in person. So it was a Zoom, and I've got that video, and she gets on there and says, I don't think Kenneth Walker's a criminal. I think he's a hero for doing what he did that night. Now, Kenneth Walker's the guy that shot me.
Yeah.
So she called him a hero, said he shouldn't be in jail, and demanded that he get out. A couple of days later, charges were dismissed and he was dropped. Now, that was the original one without prejudice. And I was assured by the district attorney, and I've talked to the district attorney one time since then, since this whole thing. That's it. So, and I was assured, they're going to come back. We're going to find more evidence, and we're going to, take it to trial. We're going to get him. Okay, cool. I'll trust you to do your job. Never happened. So I was listening to, and this is crazy, I was listening to Steve Romines, who is the civil attorney for Kenneth Walker, who shot me. And by the way, they just paid Kenneth Walker about 2 months ago, $2 million for his role in it. And so he got on a podcast with a professor at University of Louisville and accidentally told the quiet part out loud. He said, we included the district or the Commonwealth attorney's name in the lawsuit and told him we would take his name off the lawsuit if he would permanently dismiss the charges on Kenneth Walker. He said he's still got a day or two to do it. And so he dismissed the charges and they took him off the lawsuit. And I'm thinking, that sounded a little bit like coercion or bribery, or I'm not sure what the proper term would be for that.
A lot of it.
But yeah, but saying, you're getting sued, but we'll take it off if you do us a favor. He did the favor and they took it off.
What does that do to your faith in the whole? I think I know the answer, but just faith in the system. It's gone.
Well, my faith in the system wasn't great anyway. When you're on the inner workings of it and you see, we've seen this letting criminals out, and we've said for years, if you're a good, honest, hardworking person and you screw up one time and do something, you're going to get hammered by the courts. If you're a career criminal and go, you know the system. You're not doing anything. That guy that does one accidental, stupid mistake when he was drunk or whatever, but is a good guy, is going to get more time than the career criminal selling dope and having guns. It's just the way it is. It's not right. But these defense attorneys are in such bed with these judges that they'll make a deal and 2 hours later they're on the golf course playing golf together.
Yeah.
So I've seen the ugly side of it for years and hated court for that reason. But I was never a recipient of the love so much. So
yeah,
even worse now.
feeling it now. Yeah. So like, how's all your family, everybody on the mend and safety? Are you guys in danger still? Or is
that we don't know. I mean, I hope not. I still get threats and stupid stuff online all the time, which is expected with the territory. I hate this term, but it's kind of our new normal with, we had to move away from family and we're a couple hours away from everybody, which is horrible. And I hate, and that's the part, I don't have much bitterness or animosity, but when I have to travel back and forth or set aside a day or two just to go see my grandkids or something, that makes me mad when it shouldn't have been that way. It didn't have to be that way. And so I felt like that stuff's been taken from me. But other than that, we've all adjusted to what it is now, and you got to be resilient and move on. I mean, if you dwell in it, you'll just be miserable.
Yeah. What about Breonna Taylor's family? Any contact there, or I assume nothing?
No, nothing.
Have you tried reaching out to them, or
No, I haven't.
Told not
to, maybe
or...
I should. No, I mean, I'm not against it. Because again, I say this everywhere I go on podcasts and when I speak, that I honestly think she was a victim of not the system. She was a victim of the culture. She, dad's in prison her whole life. Mom didn't raise her. Grandma did. When grandma died, then her and mom started building a relationship again. But during that, you've got these young impressionable girls who these drug dealers take advantage of. Seen it my whole career. They'll have 3 or 4 baby mamas and girlfriends and all this stuff because they promise them all the world. And these girls come from families with no dads and they want that love. They want that attention and they give it to them and they shower them with stuff and they promise them all these things. And ultimately they're just using them. And I think that's what happened here. And, not saying she was a bad person. I'm not going to, defame her character because I don't know enough about it, but I really think she was a victim in all this.
Oh, it totally makes sense. It's extremely sad. For someone that, if they're listening to this and they want to, what's they've heard nothing else you've said, like what's a good takeaway from not only your situation, but other situations that are going to come and I tell people if something comes on the news, just chill because there's everything is taken out of context. Context is so critical and it's
right.
There's usually none, but we run with a headline sexy and we get to be the first to tell somebody about it. But what do you say to people?
I think the big thing is we are human. I mean, we breathe the same air you do. We eat the same foods. We got the same habits. We got the same issues. And people have so many expectations of police, I guess, in that in one sense, they want you to be RoboCop, but in the next sense, they want you to have a heart and be compassionate. In the next sense, they don't want you to ever make a mistake, but then they want you to have a human side. But those things don't go together because humans make mistakes. Things happen. People have bad days. And that's not excusing anything negative or unlawful that a cop would do. But in these situations that, for the most part, when you look back, Michael Brown, mine, several cases you can look back on that these cops were so just villainized. And later on, you find out, oops, my bad. They didn't do anything wrong. It was the bad guy the whole time. What people don't understand is I'm okay. I've dealt with this for 21 years. I'm a little callous to it. There's not much that you can say to me that's going to hurt my feelings. But when you're death threatening children and wives and parents and sisters that had nothing to do with this, when people are having to move in your family because of this, when my 8-year-old now still has nightmares thinking people are coming in the house to kill him because of all the stuff he's seen and heard, even though we've done our best to protect him, this affects all these people. So people that have no idea and they're repeating all this stuff on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, that these quote celebrities and stars and all this say that they don't know what they're talking about, and you chime in on it and you get right along with it and post your crap. you're hurting these people. You're hurting innocent people. You're doing it under the guise of protecting an innocent person that you think is innocent. But in the meantime, you're trampling all over all these other innocent people's lives that had nothing to do with it as well.
Because we can't see the results of our quote unquote our keyboard efforts.
Right.
And that's the othering. And if like you even told me, if you were in a room with those family members, they would think differently, and they would. I know they would. And if we see the human side of everybody, like you said, we wouldn't do these horrible things we do.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to stop in everything that I'm trying to do. It's like, just talk to somebody, talk to them,
yeah,
learn their story, learn the why, find out why, get the perspective, at least get the perspective, at the very least, have a balanced view on what as much as you can, because it's hard to trust any source anymore.
Yeah, I mean, because life is about balance. I mean, I love that word. I think everything, no matter if it's working out, eating, your job, your family life, everything has to have a balance, because if it gets off balance, then nothing's right. And when we allow other people to dictate what we think and what we feel, which is what social media does, then you're losing, because you're off balance. Because you like you talked about earlier, with if all I listen to is right-wing stuff and dig into that, I'm off balance. I'm not hearing both sides and able to critically think for myself, going, all right, where's the truth? I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. Where is it? Because it's usually somewhere in the middle. But I think that's balance is huge.
Yeah. There's a little bit of, there's a little bit of the devil on both sides, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I think that's all henpecking I wanted to do on you, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you spending time and sharing a little bit more about the story. Oh, what I wanted to tell people, and I sent you an email earlier today, but I'm going to buy a couple of your books and send them to you and have you sign them, and then I'm going to give some away.
Okay,
so
cool.
We'll do that.
I mean, if you want, I can we'll talk afterwards. I'll send you some signed, so you're not paying postage here and back and all that.
Okay. Well, I'll
be a lot easier.
We can do that. So
yeah.
All right, boss. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. It's good to get your perspective and from the horse's mouth. You look better.
If those family members ever want to talk, have them. I mean, get us on this Zoom and we can talk. Wouldn't hurt my feelings.
That's one of the things I want to do, is I want to bring on. I almost want to have a little talk show where,
like a panel.
Where someone like way on this side, and we talk to you and realize that, hey, we're probably more alike than we are.
Yeah, 100%. We are.
We need to. We're so impatient. We don't do that. Anyway, I'm fumbling over my words right now. It's not something I normally do. But anyway, but thanks, man.
Yeah, Brian. Appreciate you having me, buddy.
Thank you again for listening to the Parish the Thought Show. We would love your comments and feedback on our website at briankeithparish.com/feedback. If you love or hate what you hear, please give us a rating on whatever platform you find us. You're still here? Click on the next episode for more from the Parish the Thought Show.